All right, so now we are in lesson 112, 113. Notice the sign is now different. It's less than. So remember when we did the greater than before, we did positive times positive and negative times negative because a positive number, right, a positive number is going to be greater than 0. Well, now we have a less than, a negative number is less than 0. So we're working from this premise in this lesson. We're looking for a negative number to be less than 0. And since this is less than 0, this has to be negative. In order for two factors to create a negative number, you have to either have a positive times a negative to give you a negative number, or you have to have a negative times a positive to have a negative number. Right? So that's going to be our situation this time. We're going to be looking for the positive and the negative pairs that work together. So let's start on this first one. We have x plus 4, x minus 1, less than 0, and we're graphing in a line because it's reals. So that would give us, if we were to use this as positive times negative, that means this one's positive and this one's negative, we would have x plus 4 would have to be greater than 0, and x minus 1 would have to be less than 0 because it's a negative number, right? So now we're going to allow for the opposites, for this one to be negative and this one to be positive. So if that is the case, then x plus 4 has to be less than 0, and x minus 1 would have to be greater than 0, because now x minus 1 is a positive and x plus 4 is a negative. So it dictates the sign that we have here, which is going to dictate the value of the number that we use to substitute. So that gives me x is greater than a negative 4, and x is... Now, keep in mind, these are and statements, not or statements. So either both of these are going to be true or both of these are going to be true. So x minus a positive 1, then this is going to be x is less than negative 4, x is greater than a positive 1. So if one of these is true, we know both of these are true. If one of these is true, we know both of these are true. In the previous statement, we were doing conjunctions. Or I'm sorry, disjunctions, where if one of these was true, then the opposite one on the other side was true. In the less than scenario, it has to be a negative number. It has to be a negative number. And the only way to do that is for the positive and the negatives to work together. If they're opposites, it's not going to work, right? So we have to do it a certain way. And that means that both of these have to be true. So that means we really only have to test one number. And if it's true, then both of these are true. If it's false, then the other side is true. And that's all we have to really do, which just makes life a lot easier. So let's test x is greater than negative 4. A number greater than negative 4 is negative 3. So we've got negative 3 plus 4 and negative 3 minus 1. Is less than 0. I'm going back to this inequality sign here. So 1 times negative 4 is less than 0, and that is true. So that means these are the ones that we are graphing. That also means we have a conjunction. We can rewrite that as, all right, we've got x in the middle. It's less than a positive 1, but it also is greater than a negative 4. So negative 4 is less than x, which is less than 1. We're going to graph it as reals. So we're going to circle the negative 4 and circle, because we have no equal sign, we're going to circle the positive 1 and then draw a line between the two. And that is our solution. That's a lot easier because we only have to test one number, right? So let's look at the rest of these. So really the hardest part about these problems is factoring. So x squared minus 3x minus 10 less than 0. And we're graphing them as integers. So we factor it right quick. And that would be 2 times 5, with the 5 being negative, because then that gives you a negative 3 when you add 2 to a negative 5, x plus 2. Negative 5 times positive 2 is negative 10. Negative 5x, positive 2x gives us a negative 3. So that is our factoring. So we're going to go with positive, negative, negative, positive. That dictates our inequality symbol. Positive is greater than, less than is, I'm sorry, that's not greater than, is it? Positive is greater than, and negative is less than. So that's our symbols for each one. Negative is less than, positive is greater than. So x minus 5 is going to be greater than 0. X plus 2 is going to be less than 0. X minus 5 less than 0. X plus 2 greater than 0. So now we just solve x greater than 5, x less than negative 2, x less than 5, x greater than negative 2. Now we just substitute in. We go back to here. So a number greater than 5 would be 6. So 6 minus 5, 6 plus 2, less than 0, because that's the original equation. 1 times 8 is not less than 0, so it's going to be this one and this one. We can rewrite that, I do believe. Yes, x is going to be less than 5, but it is also greater than negative 2, and that is what we're going to graph as integers. So we would graph that negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the numbers between, the integers between negative 2 and 5. All right, you see how that kind of works? It's not hard. I promise you it's not hard. It's just a little tedious because you have to go through the process. At least this one is already factored for us, which makes life a lot faster. Less than 0, and it's reals, so we can draw lines. So we would say positive, negative, negative, positive, x plus 3 is greater than 0, x minus 4 is less than 0, x plus 3 is less than 0, x minus 4 is greater than 0, because positive is greater and negative is less than 0. So now we're going to solve here. X is going to be greater than negative 3. X is going to be less than 4. X is going to be less than negative 3. X is going to be greater than 4. So then we have to test. We're going to pick this one. X is greater than negative 3. That'd be a negative 2. So negative 2 plus 3, negative 2 minus 4, less than 0. That's 1 times negative 6. And negative 6 is less than 0. So these two are the ones that are correct. So if x is less than 4 and greater than negative 3, we can graph it as a conjunction. There's no equal sign, so we circle the negative 3, we circle the positive 4, we draw a line in between the two because this is the reals. All right, let's do one more. Let's see what we have. Okay, yeah, we have one more, and then I've got to take a break, and I'll come back and do lesson 13 separately. So let's do this one. We've got x squared minus 5x minus 6 is less than 0, and it's integers. We factor, and that's going to be x. We need a negative 6, and that gives us a negative 5. How are we going to do that? That's very interesting. So, okay, I got it. Negative 6 positive 1. That gives us a negative 6 and a negative 5. I had to think for just a second there. All right, so we're going to do positive, negative, negative, positive. So x minus 6 is greater than 0. X plus 1 is less than 0. X minus 6 is less than 0. X plus 1 is greater than 0. So x is greater than 6. X is less than negative 1. Or x is less than 6 and x is greater than negative 1. Now we test. I'm just going to test the first one. X is greater than 6, that'd be 7. So 7 minus 6, 7 plus 1, less than 0. 7 minus 6 is 1. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 is not less than 0, so it's going to be these two that are correct. So if x is less than 6 and x is greater than negative 1, then we have our conjunction, and that's what we're going to graph, and it's integers. So greater than negative 1 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 is less than 6, so that is what we graph. All right, so that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to do 112. I've got to stop for just a second, and then I'll come back and do 113 by itself.